You're welcome. This is one thing you lack. One thing you lack. Last week, we started this series and we began, to discuss the concept of you lack. One thing you lack. And last week, I tried to provide some foundation saying that if you were asked, are you ready for the next phase of your life? What would you say? That you are most likely to say that you are ready. I did say, well, think a bit before you answered, because for all you know, you may be surprised. Uh, because we often tend to appraise ourselves, give ourselves pass mark, believing in some cases that we're even perfect. And, we showed an example of a man, who went to his master, borrowing from one of, the scenarios that Jesus encounter had to deal with as a leader. And, the man went to him, he wanted an upgrade. He felt he was ready, for the next level in his life. And so he went ahead and made a demand on his leader, only to discover at the end of the day, to his chagrin, that he wasn't quite ready because his leader, pointed him at one thing that he lacked. And actually that encounter, served as the basis for the subject or the title of this series, One Thing You Lack. And so we would proceed today. I want to look at another, I want to begin to examine what are some of the things that we may lack. Like I said, let's focus on one thing. The leader said, there is one thing you lack. And I'd like to suggest that most of us, at any point in time, there is one particular thing we like. And the truth is, as you would see over the course of this series, what you lack may be different from what I lack. But it's one thing, it's one central thing. Now, there is also a possibility that that one thing could show up as many different things. So whereas we think we lack one thing, and indeed perhaps the things we lack can be summarized as one thing. But when we begin to examine it, we discover that that one thing can turn out to be a couple of things. And that can prove to be humbling. I mean, for people who think, who believe that they are perfect, that can prove to be very, very humbling. All right. So today I want to share with you, I'm sure, my name is Tunji Shobodu, by the way. I want to share with you using a story that many of us are conversant with. You would find that story in Matthew 25, beginning from verse 1, is a parable. And I want to say that parables, the interesting thing about parables is that they are stories. However, the story nature that they have, which all of us as leaders need to learn from, is adopted by their leader to illustrate very profound principles. So what's one of the easiest ways of conveying very profound principles in a manner that your followers understand you, in a manner that they can easily, all right, they won't forget, they can easily remember, and so it stays with them. That way, you discover that as a leader who is supposed also to be a teacher, teaching will be effective, and your leadership, therefore, will be effective. So you and I need to learn how to tell stories as a way of, teaching fundamental principles. So there's this story, that was told of 10 virgins. I'm sure, many of us can remember. So you have these 10 virgins who had, an appointment with their leader. The bridegroom was coming, okay? And they were to meet up with the bridegroom. And we understand that one, they were all virgins. So as it were, they were qualified. As it were, there is something they had been doing and doing right. So they took their lamps and they proceeded to the venue of the meeting. And, some were said to be wise, another were said to be foolish. Okay, what was the difference between them? Now, the wise, they took their lamp, they put oil in their lamp, so they had light, as it were. And then they went ahead and took extra oil, I believe, just in case, they ran out of oil. Now, that was the point of difference with, when you compare them with the foolish, those that were said to be foolish. Interestingly, we have them in equal ratio. So there were 5 who were wise, there were 5 who were foolish. The foolish ones also took their lamps, they took oil in their lamps, and so they had light as well. But the difference, they didn't take extra oil. They probably didn't think it was necessary. After all, they were virgins. After all, they had done the needful. So did they have power or light to find their way to the venue? Yes. Did they have, all right, did they ever think that the bridegroom will not show up? Or perhaps, did they think that the bridegroom will come late? All right, so all of them got to the venue. All of them were just okay. And suddenly the bridegroom did not show up at the time that they were all expecting him to show up. So what happened? In the process, they fell asleep. So a situation arose, and that put some pressure on them. They were all virgins. They all came with lamps. They all found their way successfully to the venue. But here they were. Push came to shove. If you asked them at the point that they arrived at the venue, they had fulfilled all righteousness. They were ready and perfect. If you ask them, gentlemen or ladies, are you ready? They would answer you, yes, we are ready. It was the same kind of response that man gave when they told him, okay, you want this thing, you need to obey the commandments. Those commandments are like, the policies or the requirements or the rules or the procedures that we have, in our organizations. And they said, fine. I mean, he said, fine. He was in total compliance. I mean, if that's what it would take to qualify to move to the next level, he was in total compliance. That was his assessment. Until he was told that there is one thing you lack. There is one thing you lack. So he couldn't enter into that next phase. He couldn't get that promotion because he suddenly discovered, he was being told, you lack one thing. You lack one thing. Now, look at the scenario here. At the point that they had arrived, the virgins had arrived at the venue, it would appear they had fulfilled all requirements. Not just that they were virgins, but they were also perfect because they arrived at the venue on time. They found their way to the venue. They knew enough to provide light, obviously. It may have been a journey that was undertaken at night, and therefore they knew that, they had to take their lamps, and they had to have oil in their lamps sufficient to get to the venue. Okay, and they were virgins, so they were in compliance. They took certain steps that were right, And they arrived at the venue. So at that point, if you had asked them, are you ready? They had qualified for a reward in their view, in their estimation. They never would have expected what transpired. Now, so what happened? The bridegroom didn't show up on time. The bridegroom was late. At midnight, the bridegroom showed up. At that time, they had all fallen asleep. And so they woke up suddenly when, their attention was called. And so what happened? Then the foolish discovered that their lamps had gone so low, and in some cases, they had actually gone off. So they could no longer see. They couldn't even see how to approach the bridegroom. The wise, all they did was to trim their lamps and then top up the oil, and so that they had light and they could see their way to the final ultimate destination. And so they met with the bridegroom and they went away with the bridegroom. Now, I hope you can appreciate what's going on. So this group, both groups actually believed they were ready. But just in case one group took an extra step, perhaps because, they had taken additional care to just run the various scenarios, the various possibilities. And they didn't just, stay so comfortable that they went and provided an extra. They went the extra mile. The other did well, appeared to be ready, were not smart enough to imagine, suppose there's a delay, what happens? Because this was at night. This was a night transaction, so to speak. But it was very crucial. It was a very crucial meeting, a very crucial encounter, an encounter that was it was a life or death encounter. It was a make or mar encounter. So let's look at ourselves. Now, we would have felt bad if we turned out to be one of the foolish. Why? Because we would have said, but we were told to come at this time, and we showed up at that time. But, the bridegroom didn't show up. The bridegroom was late. So why should we be held responsible? That's how we give excuses. That's how we give excuses. Because suddenly, it's being revealed to us that we lack one thing. We seemed to have been perfect. All the way, it looked as if, all was well tidied up. We were ready and it was going to be our day. And there was no way, if you had told them, that they were going to miss, the bridegroom. That price, in their view, in all of their view, the 10 of them, was theirs for the taking. But one group did something extra. The other group didn't think it was necessary. What's the point that we're making? The point that we're making is, you see why at every point in time, you and I need to take that extra measure, need to cross-check and double-check to be sure that we're not lacking in something. You see the reason why we should be careful not to beat ourselves in the chest, in spite of whatever it is we may have done and done well, because it doesn't mean that we are perfect. It doesn't mean that we're perfect. So I ask you again, what thing do you lack? What would you say these fellows lacked? There was obviously something that the wise people had that the foolish people lacked. Particularly, what was it? The wise people had extra oil. The foolish had just enough to meet the bridegroom. So what was missing in the foolish? If you listen to that story carefully, we were already given a distinction. The distinction is that we were dealing with two groups. One group was wise, the other group was foolish. So, what did the wise have that the foolish did not have? What's that one thing? The wise had wisdom. The wise had what? Wisdom. And the foolish, what did they lack? They lacked wisdom. The foolish lacked wisdom. So, in spite of all of their show, in spite of how they started and it looked as if everything was okay, look at the verdict at the end was that, gentlemen and ladies, you lack wisdom. So it's not in the beginning, it's not how well thus far, it is how well at the end. Wisdom, that it exists, that you have it, the evidence of it is in your result, is not in being right somewhere down, the journey. Wisdom is measured at the end. And at the end, it shall speak, is measured by result. Did they make it or they didn't make it? Not that they got to the venue, not that they are virgins. The requirements are far more than that. The ultimate requirement is, were they there when the bridegroom showed up? And they were not there. Why were they not there? They lacked wisdom. They lacked wisdom. Now, I'm starting with wisdom as the first thing that most people tend to lack. And at times, without knowing it, until they miss out on the ultimate result, just like those virgins missed out. They thought they were okay until they missed out. And we have seen that the difference between them and the wise is that they did not have wisdom. And wisdom is the principal thing. Wisdom is the starting point. Wisdom is a differentiator. Any day, anytime. Any day, anytime. So when you are faced with that challenge, when it appears that, look, this result, I'm so close, yet is not being delivered. I have done all. The truth is that you haven't done all. There is that one thing that you have not done. The wisdom you have, you see, the wisdom they had saw them up to a point. But their wisdom was incomplete because their wisdom could not deliver the result. It was wisdom for anyone going for that kind of appointment, particularly knowing that it was going to be in the dark, knowing that, there is a limited capacity of oil that the lamp can take. Ideally, you would expect that each one would take oil sufficient to last them even till the morning. At least that way, at no time will you be caught in darkness. So even if the bridegroom was delayed, big deal. They weren't going to take the oil with the bridegroom anyway. The purpose of the oil was so that they can see their way to where the bridegroom was and meet him. And from that point, the oil became irrelevant. The oil became relevant. The bridegroom wasn't going to make use of their oil to take them to wherever they were going. So I hope you can see it. One thing you lack. One thing that you lack. And that's how it is. It's very easy for us, to beat our chest. I remember when, I had this insight. I needed to begin to reflect on it. And I saw the number of things, that my understanding was open to. I was amazed. Like I said, this series is based on a book that I wrote, One Thing You Lack, There's a link if you're interested in getting a copy. We're going to be discussing about 15 different things. You know, I said one thing you lack, but yours may not be a lack of wisdom. But join me next week and see one more thing that we tend to lack, that tends to deprive us, you know, from the result that we desire, from the goal that we're after. One thing you lack. I hope you begin also to conduct a self-examination. You begin to examine yourself in different ways so that you don't think that you are there. You humble yourself and be on the lookout to learn. Because when you know some of these 15 things, it helps you truly to improve, to be more perfect. Because you can at least avoid, you know, their occurrences in your life. They serve as a guide. They serve as a guide, you know, that can preserve your life, that can empower you to perform. They certainly, I must tell you, will distinguish you from others. Take that from me. So this is part one. Last week, we just, you know, laid the groundwork. Today, we have looked at the very first thing, and we're starting with wisdom. Remember, it is the principal thing. It is the principal thing. People are destroyed because they lack wisdom. They are destroyed because they lack wisdom. And we see, I love that parable. You know, I love it because it showed how far the foolish had gone. They almost passed for wise people. If you and I were the ones appraising them, we would almost have given them, you know, very high scores. Because we wouldn't have asked, did they come with extra oil or not? No. And that's not important. What's important is what is the ultimate result. The important thing is, did you make it when the bridegroom came with, you know, the reward or not? Everything you did up to that point only makes sense, will only be counted or rewarded at the point when we ask, what result do you have to show? What result do you have to show? I hope you have gained something. Today is the series, One Thing You Lack. We started today with wisdom. With wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge. It is how to use what you know to produce the result that what you know has promised. And there is a gap, a big gap between knowledge and wisdom. When people lack wisdom, they can be stopped in their tracks. When you lack wisdom, you'll be looking at your result far ahead and you won't be able to get there. Because it takes wisdom to overcome hurdles that will come on your way. And wisdom, you never fully accomplish wisdom. One of the things with wisdom is that you need to be at alert. You need to continue to press, you know, to acquire it, to grow in it. There is no limit to wisdom. So let's quit beating our chests. Wisdom, the principal thing. What do you lack, sir? What do you lack, ma? Is it wisdom? I have left you, you know, with the first of at least 15 issues. Let's explore them together. At the end of it all, I guarantee you will be a different person by the special grace of God. Remember, you can get your copy of that book. You can download it. It's easy to read, and you'll find plenty therein. God bless you. Thank you for joining me today. It's One Thing You Lack. Once again, my name is Olatunji Shobodu, and this series continues this time next week by the grace of God. It's every Thursday from 7 to 7:30. I look forward to seeing you. Share, invite your friends, share the link with others, and together, let's build our wisdom base. By the way, please feel free, put your comments. I'd like to hear from you. Appreciate your feedback. Ask questions. Add, to the discourse. And like I did promise, I'll respond to the questions. We'll continue the discussion, and we can do that until same time, next week. All right. See you then. Once again, God bless you.